Engine 1 from Car 1. Car 1's on scene at Subin Command. Give me a CAN report.
Cheers.
Sláinte.
Sláinte. Welcome, everybody, to the C.A.N. Report. I'm Mike Goldstein. Stickers for most of you. I'm with a good friend of mine, Erik Thomas. He is the current chief of the Atkinson Fire Department in Atkinson, New Hampshire. And I am actually remote for this podcast. We are in his beautiful office space in his new home in Nashua, New Hampshire. Erik, welcome.
Thanks, Mike.
You're welcome, Erik. It's a pleasure to see you.
It's really good to be here with you in my study, in my new house in Nashua, new to me house.
Yeah. This house was built in 1930s?
1930, by the Thurbers. He was a banker, a very prominent banker in Nashua. He was friends with Gerald Ford. Gerald Ford actually stayed here for like 3 nights in February of 1976. So I have a picture, which you may be able to see.
Might be able to see that.
Camera angles of him in a chair with a cigar in this very room that we're sitting in right now.
And the fact that we don't have cigars in our mouth right now is probably
we could. There's
sacrilegious. We got Gerald Ford with a big old cigar in his mouth.
Certainly could at any time. But anyway.
So Erik Thomas, Fire Chief of Atkinson, New Hampshire. Tell the viewers and listeners who you are.
So I started my career in Hopkinton, New Hampshire in 2001. That was my full-time career. I got on the call department there in 1999. I was an EMT. They figured out that I was living in town and they hunted me down and said, "Hey, do you want to be on the fire department?" And I was like, "Well, sure. I mean, I'm just an EMT." And they're like, "Oh, no, we run the ambulance." I'm like, "All right." So I got my EMT in 1992. Which dates me now. So I've been 32 years in EMS now, almost 33. But I had never really done any fire service stuff. I worked as a lifeguard for the National Park Service in my early 20s. I ski patrolled in New Mexico for a couple of years. I also ski patrolled in New Hampshire for a bunch. I was at Mount Sunapee and King Ridge and Gunstock for a little bit. So a bunch of those. But I'd never really been involved in fire service. Volunteering means I was on Durham Ambulance, which is now called McGregor Memorial EMS in the mid 90s. So in 1999, I joined Hopkinton as a call member. I was hired by the late and great Rick Schaefer. Rest in peace. He's an awesome dude. He started my whole career. Hired me on the call department, and then eventually hired me full time in 2001, which was really awesome. So I was there for about 18 months. I got hired by the Concord Fire Department, which most people know. I'm pretty open about it. I got hired there in April of 2003. I was number one out of 14 guys that got hired. I remember taking that test. Like, talk about like how different the fire service is now. I took the test there at St. Paul's School with like probably 100 people into that. I was number one on their list. I had done some ride time for paramedic school there with a couple guys that have since retired, but I went to paramedic school in 2001 also. So I've been a paramedic since 2002. But so I got in the door there and, I was 30. I was 30 years old. I had worked other jobs. I've been obviously in the private sector doing other work, sales jobs and stuff like that. And, I never really had an issue with an employer. I'd always done well. I was doing fine in Hopkinton.
You were on Hopkinton. You're on Concord.
Yeah.
And then kind of fast forward to for everyone to know like your resume, if you will.
Yeah.
So then where did you go after Concord? Bedford?
I was in Bedford for 20 years. And then in January of 24 last year, I got hired as the chief in Atkinson.
And you retired out of Bedford as a captain. Really retired, you just resigned? Or
I moved on to, I made it to captain in Bedford.
Okay. And then now you're the current chief of the Atkinson Fire Department.
Correct.
How's that
For the
going?
record, I was on Concord for like a week. I think it was a week and a half.
Okay. All right. Wow. You've done a lot in 30 years.
Yeah, I've seen a couple things, and and I've worked private EMS the entire time also. for various companies. I worked for Rockingham.
And that's where we met, at Rockingham Regional Ambulance.
I worked at AMR on and off a couple times. I worked for Cataldo briefly. I worked at Trinity. Where else? That's about it. And then, now I work for Mass General Brigham. So,
And what do you do there?
I'm a home hospital paramedic.
Okay.
So they're home hospital.
Awesome. Well, Erik, thank you so much. Chief, thank you so much for being on the C.A.N report. So we got a lot to dive into. So we'll hit it running. So you were on Bedford Fire.
Yep.
20 years.
Correct.
And then you left to become a chief at Atkinson. Tell me, what is Atkinson Fire? What are they career? Again, this is for people obviously who don't know New Hampshire. So
Atkinson, it's a small town. It's about 8,000 people. We do right around 840 calls we did in 24. That'll go up 10% this year. So we'll get close to 900 probably in 25. 579 EMS calls. And the rest are, the smells and bells and all that stuff that we go to, on a regular basis. It's a combination department. We have a very strong call department there. We have a full roster at the moment, so I think we have pretty close to almost 50, I think, call people.
wow,
Some of them are per diem and stuff like that too.
that's impressive roster. I think
Impressive.
is all 50 members active though?
No, obviously not. There's always like people that you see all the time, but a lot of them are fairly active and do as much as they can. We do have some attendance standards and some training standards that we meet, that they have to meet. So, if they want to be there, they have to put in the time.
Sure.
But it's shocking, in our current environment, where we're at right now, as far as recruitment and retention goes. It's amazing to me and I have people knocking on the door all the time that want to get involved, and it's pretty impressive, so.
Do you turn anybody away? Like, is your roster full where you're like, I'm sorry, we don't have the room for you guys?
We are pretty full right now. And if people are coming in with like no certs at all, we're not really turning them away, but we're like, hey, why don't you go get your EMT? It's really like the best place to start these days, I think. And I know that might be unpopular opinion for some people, but myself being a paramedic and being, spending my entire career doing EMS based fire, you could say fire based EMS, but it's really, we're EMS departments that do fire.
Sure. Yeah.
In this day and age. And, so for me, the most valuable person that I have is the person that can fill an ambulance crew. Because I have a robust call department, people come out when stuff catches on fire. You know what I mean? Some of them are really old, but they drive trucks. They're helpful, and they have a lot of organizational knowledge and a lot of town knowledge that's sort of invaluable in those situations.
Sure.
So
what prompted you to leave your 20-year career and then you literally just made that as captain not that long? You were captain for a year?
No, I was captain for, I think it was 3 or 4 years.
3 or 4 years? Okay.
Yeah.
So you're captain for 3 or 4 years.
Yep.
The position for chief of Atkinson came up.
Yep.
Obviously you're leaving a career job.
Yep.
To go to, it's still a career for you. You're full time there, right?
Yep. Yeah.
So, but you obviously you're not now. You don't have overtime. You don't have union representation. Yep. You don't.
Well, I didn't as a captain either.
You didn't. Okay.
The captains were out of the union in Bedford.
Gotcha. So, what prompted you to leave and to go to that position?
So, I think earlier on in my career, I was thinking about, how I could make the most out of my career and what I sort of wanted to achieve, right? So I set a goal for myself that I wanted to be a chief somewhere. It didn't necessarily have to be in Bedford. And I said, well, how am I going to make this happen? And to me, it was education. So I went back to school, and I started out getting my associate's degree because I had like a whole bunch of credits just kind of sitting out in the world that I wasn't doing anything with. So I'm like, I need to like consolidate these and just finish a degree. So I got a health science degree from the Tech. And then I went to Granite State College and did a bachelor's in EMS, which is basically like a self-design degree, which I don't know if they do that anymore. I think they do, but so it was a Bachelor of Science in EMS. And then I went to Anna Maria College and got a master's in public administration. So, which is basically like, management, which is what I was interested in. I've always been kind of interested in managing people and, the interactions that we have with people in that environment, so that's kind of like what I decided to do. So like, I didn't really think I was going to get the chief job at Atkinson. I was like, oh, that's interesting. And I, having worked at Trinity for as long as I was there for almost 10 years, and I had worked in Atkinson quite a bit. Unfortunately they had lost their chief.
Right.
Chief Brian Murray had passed away in July of 23. And so,
and he was a really well-known and loved chief.
Yeah. He was a great guy, and everybody speaks very highly of him. I didn't actually know him. I think, I probably had run into him here and there, like we all do in the fire service in New Hampshire. It's a small world, but I didn't know him personally.
Sure.
But, he was a part-time chief, because I think he had retired out of Salem. So he became their like first part-time chief. The chief before that was Mike Murphy. He was chief for like 31 years. And he took it from a completely volunteer organization to a paid on-call organization to a full-time fire department. So in 2018, he hired the first 2 full-timers. I have 4 full-time right now, and I'm looking to get 2 more starting in June, hopefully. So Brian had passed away. I just kind of like threw my hat in the ring because I knew Atkinson. I was familiar with it. I knew some of the people that had worked there, and I ended up interviewing, and it just kind of worked out. So, it was a kind of a bucket list career goal for me.
Nice.
I really like it. It's a tough job sometimes, right? Like it's not all sunshine and rainbows.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's some tough stuff you have to deal with once in a while, but like this is what I wanted to do. So for me, it's what I enjoy doing. And
how was it to transition from being on career-wise as a captain on a career department, especially with the schedules you guys work, and then you've done that for so long, and then now going to an office job and working Monday through Friday, or and you don't have that same environment anymore as living in quarters with your brothers and sisters, and so and it all kind of happened pretty fast for you too. So what was it like to just really go from captain of a very busy department then to chief of a bedroom community?
It was a little bit of culture shock, because Bedford was pretty high speed. They're so busy because there's 7 nursing homes in town, and they just run and run and run. The ambulance runs and runs and runs. And to go to Atkinson, Bedford does like almost 4,000 calls, and Atkinson does like 800. So, but that's where I come from, right? Like Hopkinton, at the time that I was there, was doing, probably like 1,500 calls a year, and running an ALS ambulance, and they transported for Warner and Webster. And so, I mean, they were fairly busy. So, but that whole like environment of combination departments where you have paid on call people and you have full-time people and that whole thing, like I'm into that. I like it. But Bedford's the same. Bedford on the call department, there's not that many people left on it.
Yeah, you would have like 3 on that department.
Yeah, like maybe 3 or 5 guys, but it's still a combination department. So like I felt like I was presented an opportunity to be in the right place at the right time, because, as I'm sure we're going to get into, and as I'm sure some of your viewers already know, like we're now doing our own ambulance transplants because Trinity, the contract ended 2 days ago at midnight on March 1st. Well, I guess a day ago. We haven't done a call since, just for the record. But, I felt like I was uniquely suited to bring this department to where it needs to be, with this going on, right? Because I had so much experience with an ambulance service, in a fire department that was super busy, that I know what to expect out of this, set of events. So it was definitely culture shock. Like, and it's hard. So like, when you're a captain and you have a shift, you're working with the same guys. The crew that I had was absolutely amazing. The lieutenant I had was he's probably one of the best lieutenants. If you want to get somebody on here, I don't know if he ever would. You probably wouldn't talk about it, because he's one
Who was that?
Super humble guys that just comes in and works his ass off, and everybody respects him. and he's super knowledgeable and he does a great job. And he made my life so easy.
Who is he?
It's Lieutenant Keith Culligan.
Okay.
He's really an amazing guy.
I don't think I've ever met him.
He's great. Does an amazing job. If it wasn't for him, it would have made my job. But he made my job easy, because he just takes the bull by the horns and just gets stuff done. He's exactly the guy you want to be your lieutenant.
That's great.
He maintains order. He makes sure everybody's doing what they're supposed to be doing. He trains with the guys. Like, it was just, it was like a big family, environment. And when you're there for that long in some place for 20 years, and even though you have new people coming in, like it's all very familiar. And then to go somewhere else, you're, and it's not the same environment, right? Because they're new to this, they've only been full-time since 2018. And here I am coming in 2024 with, some ideas about how things should go. And some other people have some different ideas about how things should go. But then I remember that I'm C1 and I can just go, well, no, it's going to be this way. So that was kind of like an adjustment too. And just getting to know a different set of people. I remember our Mandy and I, my wife, we went to an awards night last year. She's like, I don't know anybody. She's like, I miss that. We're all the people that we know. I'm like, I know it's just a little bit different, but at the same time, it was a challenge, and it was, I was up for it,
So what, like, for experience wise and knowledge wise, actually even leadership, what do you want to bring to, is your plan for Atkinson? So, we've talked about leadership.
Yep.
We've talked about, the ins and outs of it and how you want to be led and how you want to lead others. What style do you bring, or what do you want your members at Atkinson to get from you?
I think leadership styles are personal, right? And meaning, like, you can try a bunch of different ones before you settle on one. And I think that was a lot of like what I learned, as a union president, as a senior firefighter, as a captain, as a chief. Different people respond to different things. Different people are motivated by different things. Some people are motivated by money. Some people are motivated by culture. Some people are motivated by, job security, like whatever it might be. So like what motivates one person doesn't motivate another. So it's the same when you go to manage people too. Like, the way that you interact with them is going to change based off of their personality and how they accept a constructive feedback, right? I don't call it criticism because that's negative. I like to use the word feedback. And how you present it. You know what I mean? There's like the compliment sandwich, right? Which people say is terrible, but I think it has value.
It's funny you say that. I actually use that, go off my tangent real quick, but talk about leadership. Like in my previous department, I had mentioned that to that fire chief I worked with. And I told him, I said, you got to put it in the sandwich because all I hear is negative from you. But it'd be nice if you like layered it out for me. Mm-hmm. If you told me some things I'm doing right, put the niceness on the bun. Like, you're doing a great job. This is fantastic. That's the bun. Then you've got like the tomato, but there's some things here going on here. And then I said, if you can layer it out with like, if the meat is like my feedback, like what is it that I need to improve on? Give me the meat. Tell me what's going on.
And be specific.
Be specific. Let me know what's happening. If you come at me with like, you suck at this, you suck at that.
Yeah.
I don't like you for this. I don't like you for that. And it's just all negative. I'm going to walk out of that room going, that guy is a fucking asshole. Yeah. And all I got out of that meeting was negativity. Yep. And I'm not going to be in a better mood, and I'm not going to really improve because all I hear is how much I suck. But if you actually do word, it's like, I see improvement here and I see improvement there. We need to work on this part. There's the burger. And then leave it, the bun with leaving. That's again, another, I won't say fluff, but that's the good part. We're leaving on a good end. I see this improvement here. I want you to work on this. Now I can eat a sandwich. There's could be maybe some bites in there I'm not going to like. Yeah. But once the burger is finished, it's settling. I'm digesting that information, and we can come out with a better understanding.
Because, at the end of the day, what's our job, right? When we're talking about new people coming into your organization, right? What's your job for those people? Your job is to make them better than you, right? Your job is to assimilate them into your environment and make them perform, like make them good at the job, right? Like they always say, the best thing old firefighters can do is make more old firefighters. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? Like like set people up to succeed, right? Just because you got hazed when you went in the fire department doesn't mean that you should be hazing other people.
100%.
Right? You don't always have to break people down to build them back up again. That's a bullshit thing to do, right? I suffered through some of that myself, and you can always learn. You can learn stuff from everybody, right? You can learn stuff from bad leaders. You can learn stuff from good leaders. You take things from your experience, right? They're not kidding when they say experience is the best teacher, right? Like I'm a pretty smart guy. I have a lot of book learning. Like school is pretty easy for me. Like I write well, I speak well, but at the same time, like I could read a book about something or watch a video about something, but until I actually get my hands on it and do it, like I'm not going to retain that information. So like knowing somebody's learning style, knowing somebody's personality and what their triggers are, like this is all part of that being leader. So you're not just blindly like punching people in the face all the time with bullshit. You know what I mean? Like really figuring out who your crew is and how they respond to stuff is really the best thing that you could do for these guys, because everybody is different.
Yeah.
Everybody learns different. Everybody
has their strengths and weaknesses.
You know what I mean? Like I have a guy that works per diem for me as a Marine. Like I can hit him with a baseball bat and I'll thank you, sir. Like he doesn't care. You know what I mean? But I have other guys that are really sensitive that like you say one word sideways, like, oh, I'm sorry. Like, and then they're crying in my office. You know what I mean? So you really have to just pay attention, I think, at the end of the day, and set benchmarks for people. One of my biggest frustrations when I sort of got absorbed into larger departments, small departments are a little different than bigger departments, culture wise, something like that. Everybody has a culture, but cultures change and they're different. But, for me, like I never knew what I was doing wrong. People are like, oh, you need to figure this out. You need to be better. You need to do it. I'm like, at what? You know what I mean? Like I could never figure it out, and that was part of the problem.
So that wasn't like setting expectations for you.
Exactly.
Like,
like they fired me after a week and a half and I had no idea why. I really had no idea. I mean, I kind of know now, like I had a big mouth, and I needed to be more seen and not heard.
Mm-hmm.
But the problem is I'm a giant. And whenever anybody said
anything, how tall are you again?
I'm 6'6".
Okay. And you are a giant.
When anybody said anything in the group, I was in a group of 14 guys, right? If anybody said something, they would immediately look at me because I was the tallest guy in the crowd, right? But, so for me, that was a big adjustment. And I felt like people were like, oh, you got to figure it out. You got to figure it out. But I couldn't figure it out because I didn't know what I was doing wrong.
Yeah.
And, I think doing the whole probation thing where you're like, you get fired on day 364, is bullshit. Like you should never, because it reflects poorly on you at the end of the day, right? Like I said, you got to set people up to succeed, not to fail. So how do you do that, right? You set benchmarks, right? You do like quarterly reviews. That was one of the things that we started doing in Bedford, and a colleague of mine was like, hey man, this is something that we really should do. And I go, you're right. And he's like, but I can't present it because nobody wants to hear it from me. So I'm like, well, I'll take your idea and I'll present it and I'll give you full credit for it, and so that's what we did. So you basically come in, you're on probation, you get your probie manual. You're like, okay, you're going to have a quarterly review with the training captain and with your officer, whether it's captain, it was captains at the time, captain, lieutenant, your training officer. And we'll tell you what you're doing right and what you need to improve on, right? Because that way, if nobody tells you what you're doing wrong, you can't get back. Right. You know what I mean? So like, it's complicated for some people. It was for me. I struggled a lot trying to fit in to the fire service. It's an interesting animal and I still probably don't really fit in, but I'm the chief now, so it doesn't matter. I can make whatever I want.
No, you're right though. I think you, with setting benchmarks, but also with fitting in, it can be a tough culture.
Yeah.
To acclimate yourself to a bunch of people, especially when they've been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Everyone's got their little cliques, everyone's got
a closed organization.
Yeah.
Right?
And you also have to prove yourself. I think that's a big thing, work ethic wise, skills wise. I think what I've noticed in my tenure as being a firefighter is we love to talk about our job. We love to teach people, but sometimes if you don't know how to teach people, it can come off angry.
Yeah.
And that person's not going to want to learn from you.
Right.
And that was my situation. Was the training captain at the time and became chief. He was just always angry when he was training us. And so we were like, we don't want to do this because we're going to get yelled at. And we knew we knew there were certain trainings we didn't want to go to because we knew it was going to be a really stressful time for everybody because he was just going to be angry and it wasn't going to be fun. Because when you're not having fun in training, who's going to want to do that?
Exactly.
And setting those expectations, but also helping people to fit in, it really helps. And especially when someone's so new to the fire service.
Yeah.
And they don't know.
It might be their first job
ever.
Like there's a lot of that coming in now. Like these kids, like they've never worked anywhere
and
they have no idea.
Yeah.
You know, it's crazy.
It's especially when they don't come from a family either that has been in the fire service.
Right.
So, because when you have generational firefighters, their parents and grandparents can tell them, be prepared for this, do that. They already come prepared, or they spent time in that firehouse or many other firehouses. Yeah. So they know how the guys are going to act and what they're going to say and the ball busting. But if you've never been in that environment, it can be pretty jarring.
Yeah.
And
very intimidating.
Yeah, that's senior guys, officers, everyone as a group that's where we have to start understanding that we need to be understanding that they don't have that background.
Yep.
But it's funny that you say that because I think that when I see new people, especially the kids coming in, that we can see it on their face. They're wide eyed.
And it's tough to walk into those firehouses. So when you're new like that and you don't know what to expect and you have no frame of reference.
And that's why I think it's so nice that in our area in New Hampshire, we have a lot of call and volunteer departments.
Yes.
And so that helps to get you adjusted to that environment.
Yeah, for sure.
That's why I joined the call department. It was a great learning experience. Made a lot of brothers and sisters, learned the job. As soon as you start getting into it, you're having a lot of fun. And then as you go to a career department, you're already used to that environment. Mm-hmm. The living style might be different, but the work is still the same. And so it's nice that we can live in certain areas where we can join it. Like you joined Hopkinton, you had that environment before you came into it. So you wasn't blindsided by, oh my God, what did I get myself into?
I think I think at the end, I don't know, man, Hopkinton was definitely different than where I ended up at Concord and then subsequently Bedford, but because I clearly struggled with all that. But yeah, generational firefighters are a different breed too, and I'm the only one in my family.
Me too.
And none of my kids want to do it either. So I don't blame them.
But like my father-in-law, I was lucky enough to marry into it.
Absolutely.
So I was lucky enough then, but I was well into my 20s.
Yeah.
And
I was 30.
Yeah. And I was just going to say, I was approaching my 30s when I got into the fire service.
Yeah.
But my father-in-law told me all the joys about it. And his dad told me all the fun stuff that they do.
Yeah.
So, and I think also that living a life prior to the fire service, when you actually live like a colorful life, you did, I did, I think that helps for me, it helped me to understand what I'm getting into. Because if you've never had real life experiences, hardships, things like that.
And just work in general.
Yeah.
Like job.
Responsibility.
Yeah. Stuff like that, for sure.
And so going with that with jobs and moving on, like you were, I think I probably said it to you before, but you were a huge inspiration for me to move on. Yeah, dude. Like when I reached out to you, when I was struggling in my previous department, it was no secret. And you were like a huge supporter of me. Like you need to get out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
And I remember you saying all the time, you got to get out. It's small town. There's nothing wrong with small town, but you're never going to grow more than what you are now.
Yeah.
You have to be able to expand your experiences and see what it's like working for bigger departments.
Yeah.
If you want to stay in your where you are now, that's totally cool, but you're never going to grow.
Yeah. And sometimes it's really hard to make that leap. And, they always say like, they, whoever they are, it's like anecdotal stuff that just cruises around the fire service. Like the first 5 years of career is when you're supposed to like move around, and try different places. And sometimes I wish, I had done that too, but, we're all a product of our environment at the end of the day.
Absolutely.
And, it's really funny. Like, I got an apology from the guy that basically signed my termination paperwork at Concord, in the city of Concord. And
how long ago was that?
that I got an apology.
Mhm.
That was a couple of years ago.
Okay.
So it was well, I was still probably in Bedford. He's a very well-respected person in the New Hampshire Fire Service, and I love him to death, and he's a great guy. And for him to say that, I was like, it's okay. I said, you don't need to apologize, because I wouldn't be the person I am today if that stuff didn't happen to me. And it's a product of our experience, and everything happens for a reason, right? So they say. And there's they again. And I agree with that to a certain degree. Like, it's all what you make of it. Like, I could have just hung it up at that point and been like, well, I'm done. Like, the fire service isn't for me, but I ended up getting a job again. And despite the fact that I had a ton of baggage now, and everybody knew about it, right? Because I went to sit for my oral board in Bedford, and Folsom's, Ken Folsom worked at Concord. His twin brother Keith worked at Bedford. I didn't know they were twins. And I walked into that oral board and I was like, what? Right? So, like, there was no secrets there.
Yeah.
I wasn't fooling anybody, but they still took a chance on me, and here we are. But it's these are things that shape us and make us who we are at the end of the day. And this is why, I think when you struggle and when you have adversity, you either, figure it out and you get through it and you become a better person for it, or you just fold up and you go away and crawl into a hole.
I couldn't agree more. I really feel that it was literally like you and I have that same kind of mentality. I've learned that you can learn from the wrong people.
Yeah.
But you can turn that into a positive experience. So all that negative.
No, I will never do that to someone.
Correct.
I will never ever treat someone.
Correct. For instructional wise, for leadership wise, just mentality of how to deal with people. I've learned from the people that have scarred me.
Yeah.
And it's made me a better person.
It's almost like you almost learn more.
Yeah.
From those negative experiences than you do from the positive.
Yeah.
But like, by the same token, like, let's talk about Captain Clark for a minute, right? Like, I went to the fire academy, and, I'm old, but not that old. Like, I think firefighter 1 for me was like 99 or 2000.
Okay.
Right. And Captain Clark was teaching my class, and he kissed me on that back then.
You know what I mean? Man, I love getting my kisses.
And I'll never forget. I will never forget that guy, and I will never forget some of the things that he said to me during that class. You know what I mean? That's how positive a person he was, right?
Yep.
So it's for all the negative things that you remember, sometimes the positive ones stick out too.
100%.
But it's all what you make of it. You have to take all that stuff, and you have to, channel it to something that is useful.
I couldn't agree more. And I've definitely applied it to life. And even not just fire service, like for me, like childhood experiences and dealing with issues that I had growing up. I think it's made me a better father.
Yeah.
Like knowing how to treat my kids, knowing that I'm never going to be that kind of father. Now, even go on that kind of personal level, like I came from an abusive background. I could have used that as a crutch.
Yep.
And I could have been a crappy dad and crappy husband because I dealt with that. And usually that's what happens. Usually that kind of just filters through and you become them.
Cycle.
Yeah. And I always made sure that was never going to happen. And I'm proud that I have a different upbringing for my children than I had growing up.
Yeah.
And I take a lot of pride of not being divorced, not being abusive, not being an alcoholic, not being these things that I witnessed when I was growing up.
Yeah.
And so I can apply that also to the fire service as well. When we're on calls and if there's a child you could tell that is having some issues with their family, when you had that experience, you can apply that to that child and understand where they're coming from, or look for those clues that there's something wrong. And again, that's where comes experience of lifetimes of doing not just the job, but just living. And I think that's makes strong leaders. What you have experienced in your lifetime is now making you a better chief.
I hope so.
And
I like him.
So I think it's you need a chief that's also lived experiences as well.
I think so, and I think one of the big things for being a fire chief too is that being the chief that came up through.
Yeah.
Because, all too often you see some chiefs that didn't come up through, and maybe they took a different path, or they came through prevention, or they, whatever the case may be. And they don't really understand what it's like to live in the firehouse. They didn't work. They didn't do shift work. They weren't up all night with their crew doing, shitty calls and stuff like that. And that, I think, it gives you, well, it gives you cred, right? It gives you street cred.
Street cred.
You know what I mean?
Word.
But credibility in general,
Yeah.
so like when my guys are like, hey, chief, like when I got there, they're working 412s, right? I had 4 full-time positions. One of the guys had left, so I only had 3 filled at the time. And they were working 412s, and they were dying. Like by the 4th day, we're exhausted. And they're working like A to 6P.
That's why I used to work.
6A to 6P. And I'm like, that sucks, right? That's a shitty schedule. I started in January. They were doing that. I'm like, I was trying to find somebody to fill that 4th spot, right? And I'm like, I need somebody who's going to be like really strong in EMS. And because I saw this Trinity thing coming, because Plastow was jumping out, and that they were like the first domino.
So we'll back up to that.
Yeah.
What is the Trinity thing? Because I've only followed bits and pieces.
Yeah.
So what exactly is now transitioning, or what has happened to lead you up to where you are now for your EMS coverage?
Sure. So for the past 16 years, Trinity it's Prime Star Trinity now. They have been the ambulance provider for kind of like a 6-town consortium, right? So it was Plastow, Atkinson, Newton, Sandown, Danville, Hampstead.
Wow.
So they had 2 trucks, one in Hampstead, one in Atkinson in the station. I worked there back in the day. And Plastow got a new chief. Chief Knutson's been there 3 or 4 years. 4 years then? 3, 4 years? 2020. He came in right when COVID hit. So he's going on 5. He's a paramedic. He came out of Tennessee. He was a training guy there. Good dude, smart, great paramedic. He had a vision that he didn't like the service level he was getting from Trinity, which was just his thing. That's not to say that they weren't doing good service. I'm not going to say that. He just didn't like the service that he was getting for the town of Plastow. So he decided that he wanted to do it himself. So he did it. He created a plan. He enacted it. He got the funding. He made it happen. He had 18 months to do it. That's impressive. And made it happen, right? So Trinity was 0 bid for those 6 towns. So it was kind of a no-brainer. They had a paramedic on the truck, on each truck, 24 hours a day. So you had an ALS ambulance in our station. Newton, they're like 20 minutes away from, but that's a whole other conversation. And it was kind of a no-brainer. So everybody got really complacent about it and said, well, we don't really need to staff anything because we have all these Trinity medics and blah, blah, blah. So the first domino was Plastow. 2024, March 1, they went out on their own. And it went from a 0 bid contract to costing each town $130,000. So some of the towns were like not into that. And they were like, well, we don't really want to pay $130,000. But at the end of the day, $130,000 for 24-hour coverage from a paramedic and a transporting ambulance is worth it. So realizing this, I don't have the staff. I have 3 full-time guys in a call department and this transporting entity that gives me a paramedic whenever I want it. I want to keep them for as long as I can. Sure. $130,000 is a small price to pay for that level of service, in my opinion. But some other towns don't want to do that. And the problem is that the contract, you can only do a 1-year contract when you have multiple towns, because multi-year contracts have to get voted on at town meeting and arrange that among 5 towns is impossible. So they stuck with the 1-year contract, for $130,000, which I guess that was before I got involved. They negotiated that price. There was a couple of different iterations of that didn't fly, but, based off like call volume that, people didn't want to pay more. And so they just divided it evenly. And then some of those other towns decided to drop out on this year. And it wasn't me. I was like, is there any way we can get like 1 more year out of you so I can staff up some more? But it was not cost effective to do so. So we're like, well, I guess we're going to have to do it ourselves. So that's kind of like the deal. That's basically what happened. So March 1st at midnight in 2025, Trinity was all done providing ambulance services for that southern New Hampshire, area for the remaining 5 towns.
And so now Plastow runs the medical side of it.
No. So Plastow is their own entity, right? So they handle the calls for their town and whatever.
Okay.
What they're doing now is XRALS was essentially disbanded by the Beth Israel. The Beth Israel came in and bought XRALS, right? And they said, well, you guys are losing a lot of money. So we're just going to cut all these services. They cut op health, they cut podiatry, they cut like a whole bunch of stuff. And
Wow.
one of those things that were chopping block was the ALS intercept service because they weren't making any money.
Mm-hmm.
One could assume, it's allegedly, I don't know if they were or they weren't.
Sure.
I'm assuming they weren't. And they like came in and they like, just like, yeah, you're done right now. And they're like, what? And they were covering like 14 or 18 towns that all of a sudden would have ALS services immediately. So the Attorney General for the state of New Hampshire stepped in and said, you can't do that. At the very least, you give them 90 days.
Yeah.
That's what the contract says. And they're like, oh. So in the meantime, the Seacoast fire chiefs got together and created a work group, which I was a part of. And we sort of like put our heads together to figure out what we're going to do. Chief Knudsen from Plastow was already kind of working on a plan for an ALS intercept service anyway. So he just sort of expanded it to cover the whole county. He got funding, so the first year's free. So he had a whole plan on how to execute it and exactly how much it would cost everybody. So the work group looked at his plan. They looked at a couple other plans. They invited people to come in and bid on it, create a contract. So they talked to a bunch of different organizations, and they ultimately decided that Chief Knudsen had the best plan.
That's really ambitious.
Yeah.
It's really impressive. I mean,
it really is. The amount of stuff that he put together in a short period of time.
Yeah. 18 months to do something like that.
Well, 18 months he did for his own ambulance service. This was less than that.
Wow.
I think he already had some ideas in play, but yeah, so
that's a lot, man.
He's going to take over the town of Plastow. Is going to basically run a municipal ALS intercept service.
Okay.
So they go live March 21st. They'll have 2 trucks, one in Brentwood with 2 medics on it, because Brentwood's sort of centrally located in the county, and one in Plastow that will have a supervisor on it, which is sort of more for like they're up right now because we signed a contract. He put a medic in a car March 1 at midnight, basically for our side of the county.
Sure.
For us, essentially, us and Danville and Sandown and
wow,
and Newton and things like that, like all those little towns around there. So that was good because we don't have a lot of paramedics in Atkins.
Yeah. So what you have now, you're trying to add more to relieve the call volume, and these guys you said they're getting tired. Your guys are feeling taxed.
Yep. So they were working 412.
Yeah.
And so I needed to hire a 4th person. And I was looking for somebody sort of EMS oriented, and a person got dropped into my lap who was a paramedic who was not necessarily happy with the way things were going where he was currently employed. I offered to make him a captain, gave him a pretty good salary, sold it to the select board, and we hired him on. And I told them, once we get him in, he started in June of 24. I said, in July 1, you guys are going to 24s. So 24 on, 72 off. They're like, can we do the 1-1-1 and 5? I'm like, no.
Wow, no, that's a great schedule.
Well, let's do 24-72s. Let's keep it easy for that.
Yeah, no, dude, that is amazing that you were able to do that for them.
Well, so
that's a big step.
And that's the thing, is that I told them that's what I was going to do, and then I did it.
Yeah.
Right. So they're like, and honestly, like, if you're going to say you're going to do something, just do it. Right. And so,
and that's great.
What I try to do. Right. If I tell people I'm going to do something, I do it. Because if you don't, then you just look like a fucking asshole.
Empty promises too. Like, oh, I promise you I'm going to get more guys. Like,
right.
It's going to happen. You just have to wait and be patient.
Yeah.
Well, meanwhile, they're looking at their watches going, when's this happening? Because this is not, the schedule sucks.
Yeah.
Or I am exhausted.
I'm going to leave.
I'm going to find a better job somewhere because you already got your foot in the door. Right? So you're now a full-time employer, you're a career firefighter. Yeah. You have your year experience in. Now you got lateral somewhere else.
Yeah. We all know the current state of recruitment and retention that basically you can get hired anywhere.
It's a buyer's market.
Anywhere you want to go.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I was afraid that I was going to lose more people, which I didn't want to do. So, and I understand what they're talking about because I've been there. And like I've worked the shifts that they've worked. I've done the calls that they do. I know what it takes. I know what
And
it
I
takes.
came from that same background. My schedule is 4 days on, 4 days off, 7 A to 7 P. And man, what sucks the most is when you're not busy, you're just sitting around smelling each other's farts for 12 hours. You can only shine shit so many times. You can only clean the station, wash the truck, throw some there's only so much you can do within those times.
Right.
And the fourth day, you're like, I don't want to come back here for a week.
Not to mention that, but especially like departments that transition into full-time from call only and things like that, like they don't always like understand that you're getting paid to be there to be ready to do stuff. That doesn't mean you have to work the entire time that you're on shift.
The busy work.
I hate that.
Yeah.
Like, you can't go and sit down and take it. Like, we had this thing in Bedford. It was always like the moment in time thing, where like you're out busting your ass in the bay, you're doing a bunch of training, then you finally get a second to come in, or you're like running calls. You finally get a second to come in the day room. It's like a hot day and you want to go hit some AC, and you sit on the couch, and then that second the chief walks in, and what does he say?
Yeah. You guys got something better to do?
No, like every time I come in here, you guys are fucking up and down. You're like we're just busting. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
The moment in time. I hate that. Right.
But the chief should also know, like, obviously they hear things, right?
No.
Right? They should know. So like if the guys are running ragged, the chief's listening.
Or maybe don't worry about it.
Yeah.
Right? Maybe it's not
there's bigger things to worry about.
To be at your level.
That's why you have captains and lieutenants.
Company officers.
Yeah.
For that kind of stuff. Right.
That's just micromanaging when it comes to that.
And I can't tell you how much I hate micromanagers. And because of that, I'm probably like the least hands-on manager you'll ever meet in your entire life. And I think to the point where like some people love it, other people hate it because they're like,
what am I supposed to do?
Well, am I doing the right thing to do?
Yeah.
They're like, bro, I gave you something to do.
Yeah.
Just go do it. Like, I don't care how. Like, there's a million ways to skin a cat. I don't care how you do it. I don't need you to do it my way. Find a way, get it done. Like,
but then you get those people like, and then they're going to give you the minute by minute report of what they did, right? So not only are there the micromanagers to train them to not be able to breathe on their own, but now every time they give them a responsibility or a chore, they don't know what to do. But then they're going to give you those minute by minute updates. Right. I did this. I got up out of my chair. Is that cool? Is that right? Right. Then I went over and walked here and I did this. Is that correct? Is that what you wanted me to do? You're not giving them that freedom to think.
And it's interesting, like I'm just being me, right? So I'm coming in there and I'm running things the way I think they should run, and I'm doing what I think should be done, and I'm being me. I meet with I have a C2 and a C3, and they're both paid on call guys. They're not full time, and I was sitting with my C3 at one day, and he's like, you really, because I've been watching to see what you do. Like, I was like, really? Like, I didn't even pay any attention. I've been like watching because I find it interesting what your management style is. And I was like, oh, that's really cool. Because I'm just doing what I think is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
And that's based off of my experience in those positions. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, and I don't know. I just, it's integrity, right? It's doing the right thing. Like making sure everybody's taken care of and that they have an environment that they can grow in and they can do stuff. Like, that's how you empower your people, right? You give them a task to do and you just let them do it. You don't have to check in.
Right.
You know what I mean?
They're going to grow when you give them that freedom to be themselves.
Hopefully.
Yeah. I mean, well, you got to plant, like I say it a lot, planting that seed. Like, I want you guys to grow.
Yeah.
Here's my expectations, grow from that.
Yeah.
And make me proud.
Yeah.
And like I can't remember who said,
setting them up for success.
Yeah. And I can't remember who said it. It was like, don't make me be the chief.
No.
Right?
Right.
Like, I trust you guys.
Yeah.
Don't make me be that guy. Don't make me be the chief to have to come in here and
I can remember like one of the first, probably like in the first couple weeks that I was chief, and I come in the morning and they'd be on the 12-hour shifts, so, and they get in at 6. So I come in and like, I go to get coffee, like the day room's dark, cause that's automatic light. So if you don't move, they shut off. And these two are like sitting on the couch, which I don't blame them because it's probably like day 4 and they're like exhausted. And it's 6 a.m. and I get in at 7. They go to get coffee and then I'd sit there with them and stuff like that. And then other, some call guys would wander in once in a while. And I remember just like shooting the shit and like doing firehouse stuff. And then the town administrator calls me and he's like, hey, I got somebody complained about some of the language you were using. I go, really? they're like, yeah, you were saying like you were their daddy or something like that. And I was like, oh yeah. He's like, maybe don't say that, And I'm like, yeah. I'm like, you don't understand because you're not in that environment, but somebody clearly was in the room that I offended in some way, but the crew that was, they loved it. Right. And we still talk about it to this day. I don't know who complained about me, but it's water over the dam at this point.
Yeah.
It didn't,
But it's also weird, like talk about transitioning though.
Yeah.
So now because you are the chief, right? You know the thing. So it's like you can't say certain things.
There's certain things you can do and certain things you can't do, right? And that was one of them, I guess. Like
and that's difficult to break though.
It is.
It's 30 years of you being a line firefighter, riding the truck with all the guys, and that's what we do. We love to make funny, colorful jokes, off the collar jokes, and then you move into an admin position, and now it's you got to watch it.
Watch a little bit,
especially and it's kind of it's a tough area too, because you think about it, like if someone doesn't like you, if someone's got, I'm not saying you, but like someone in general, right? Yeah. If you're wearing the brass, and if someone has a target for you, and you say something that they can misconstrue, and they take it out of context, man, now you're really having,
which is really like the story of my life. Like early on in my career, I felt like I was always misunderstood, and I didn't know. From what the best thing that I could figure out was that, obviously we talked about I'm really tall, which is intimidating for some people.
Yeah.
Right. Not if you don't know me and the giant fuzzy teddy bear that I am.
You get great hugs.
Yeah. You might be really intimidated by me, which I don't get it, because I'm just a big idiot. Just ask my wife, she'll tell you. But people would take what I said the wrong way a lot.
Yeah.
And I was getting called on the carpet for it all the time. I got written up for it on multiple occasions early on in my career before I finally figured it out and just put the filter on all the time.
Yeah.
My mantra became, okay, thank you. That's how I got through all of those years of having a giant target on my back. Not only was it okay, thank you to anybody that said something to me, regardless of whether I agree with it or not. If somebody said, like, if I got hauled up into the deputy's office or something like that, they'd be like, hey, what happened on this? I'd be like, yep, it was my bad. I fucked up. This won't happen again. And they're like, because
but you own it.
I owned everything because I was getting headhunted big time.
And I think that's important though too, is a big learning experience for a lot of people is owning it. If you try to lie or try to skirt from the truth, you're going to get caught, and they're ready to jump on you, right? Like, all right, we got him now.
Yep.
And if you try to lie, but when you go and go, yep, my bad, man, I fucked up.
And they're like, it takes all the wind out.
It really does.
It really does. And it makes you look good, and you just own your mistakes, man. You have to.
Yeah.
Everybody fucks up, dude. Nobody's perfect. Nobody is 100% right all the time. If you mess up, you just got to own it.
Yeah.
Like I wrote an email. I do a weekly update, to the whole department. And this is kind of a dumb example, but because it really doesn't matter. But I wrote in there at the end, I put in, oh, don't forget to move your clocks ahead on Saturday night, and sent it. And then I'm like, a couple hours later, it was like, oh man, it's next weekend. So I immediately wrote another email. I go, hey, my bad. It's next weekend that we move the clocks ahead. It's totally trivial.
Yeah.
In the grand scheme of fuck ups, but what other chief would do that? I'll throw myself on the sword.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I have, everybody has an ego, but I mean, shit happens, dude. And if you're human and you show that side of you, being fallible, people respect you for that, unless you're like a complete fuck up and you're just messing up. That might be an issue. But, at the end of the day, being a human being and being vulnerable goes a long way to build trust, with your people.
Yeah.
And
your years of, we talk about being a complete fuck up and unteachable sometimes, but do you think that this is just really dawned on me for a question?
Yeah.
Especially for your years of experience and now being a chief. When do you find out where someone can do this job or can't do this job? And that's a big question, right? And it comes up a lot. I see in social media and things like it. Someone made a good point. I was reading somewhere where there's just sometimes some people just can't do the job. And this is not male or female. This is
as an oral board question for a lieutenant exam once. Because there was a certain department that you may be aware of involved with that had somebody who they use that as an example and to me, like, it's really hard to give up on somebody like that. Like I'll go through pretty long lengths to if I have you in my, in my department, like I want you to succeed, right? So like we're gonna do everything we can. And I don't know that. I mean, I guess
because we spent the money.
Yeah,
you've done the background checks, you've done their physicals, you've done all these things.
I don't care about the money that much. I mean, it's always a calculated risk with that, and it is expensive to bring somebody on board and buy them gear and do all the things. But like, if you are inherently afraid of going into a burning building, then I don't know what I can do for you at that point.
Because you could teach them the skill.
Yeah.
But if they can't, when the tones go off and they can't do the job,
and they're
not because, let's say skill wise, let's say they can perform the skills in the drill yard, but then when it comes
they're at the door.
They're at the door and they freeze and they say, I don't like this. But they want to stay in the department. Like, what do you do with that?
Yeah, that's a really tough one.
Well, you can't, how do you train to get over that fear?
I don't think that there's a good answer for that. I certainly don't think that there's a blanket answer. In every that.
I didn't mean to line you up for a tough question, but it's just like,
it's fine.
It's just something that people talk about. And it made me spark that for like,
I got left in a building one time. My partner left.
Why did they leave?
I don't know. I still don't know this day. And that person remained in the fire service. And I think it's still in the fire service now, but they're not in a firefighting capacity. But
so they
just second alarm fire in the building on a hose line, spraying fire.
Spraying water on fire.
Spraying, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Spraying fire.
That would make me the arsonist.
Yes, sir.
I was spraying water on the fire, like I'm supposed to, because that's what they taught me in the fire academy, is the wet stuff and the red stuff. So I was doing that. And then my vibra alert started going off, and I'm like, well, I guess that's trying to like make.
And you're like, hey, man, we got.
Hey, exactly.
Hey,
gone. I don't know when he left. And I like came out of the building, and I was like, what the fuck, dude? And I don't even remember what he said to me. This was a long time ago. This is back in Hopkinton. So it was the beginning of my career. And I was like, what are you doing? I think he was like, oh, I ran out of air, like, or something, but I have no idea when he left. Cause I was like, hell yeah. I was like, I'm in the fire. I'm like, I'm on the knob. I'm doing the thing, and I didn't even notice that he left. He didn't tell me. Like, I was like, Jesus, like, what if something happened? Like, I was lucky, really lucky.
Really, very, very lucky. And so that's, again, I think about that when that person, you got somebody who just panics every time, they get on air or they're moving or like, and again, this is not, I don't expect you to come up with like an answer, but these are things that come up a lot in discussions, is that not everybody can do this job. But yet some people are in the job where they shouldn't be. It's like, at one point, does it eventually get to the point where we're like, okay, especially when unions get involved now, right? And again, this is not crapping on unions, it's not crapping on any department, but there's times where like, how do you get it to that level? Like, okay, we got to sit down and you go, you can't do this job anymore. Like we're watching you, you are not up to standards. And this is like, because when you're on probation, it's different, right?
What did that deputy chief in LA say? That if you've gotten yourself in that situation,
it's probably their fault, right? And that's wrong.
It's totally wrong.
It's totally wrong.
And for a firefighter to say that on national TV, like, I saw that and I was like, oh my.
Just literally just dug a grave and just
gotta be
bury yourself.
Right?
Yeah.
You're kidding.
And that has nothing to do with whether you're male or female, because I know I've seen it, I've watched it. There are some kick-ass chicks in the fire service that do an amazing job.
Dudes that can't even lift their own body weight.
Yeah.
So
absolutely.
The knife cuts both ways on that one.
Yeah.
But
yeah, so it's just topics I think of a lot.
That's a tough situation to be in. I think really what you need to do is drill down to what the root cause is, right? Some root cause analysis on that person. Are they inherently afraid of fire? And so when it gets real, they're just a vapor lock.
Or what about afraid of heights?
Right. Or they're feel great about heights.
So so now
top of the ladder, being like, and you get that feeling in your balls, and you're like, I don't really want to be up here.
Well, what about like, so
I just
call departments, volunteer departments.
Yes.
So what about that? So like they're volunteering their time. Do you have that same standards if I want you to be able to go inside that fire?
This is the reason why volunteerism is dying, is because we're holding those people to the same standard as full-time people. They have to get all the same training, they have to do all the same things because it's a safety issue.
Yeah.
Like, the days of the dude with the full beard, like, running in the, like being on the, the backseat of the fire truck and getting ready to go. Like that's not, that's not how I run my department. We have standards. There are policies in place. There are,
do you ever have anybody that just walks and goes, I don't want to do any of this. I'll drive your truck and that'll be it.
And you know what? So at this stage in the game where we are in this labor market that we have, I'll take anything I can get, right? Like I need to be able to get trucks out. I got a guy who's 78 years old. He does a lot of fire inspections for me. He's pretty spry.
Yeah.
And he drives trucks.
Yeah.
Should he be driving a truck? I mean, yeah, he's okay, right? He can run a pump, he can do all that.
Yeah.
Is he going to own a building? No.
Yeah.
At 53 years old, I'm 53. I shouldn't be in a building anymore. Like I can't physically, I shouldn't be doing that anymore. I'm not in the kind of shape that it takes to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Right. I don't work out. I had foot surgery last year. My feet are junk. Like I can barely stand up for more than 15 minutes.
I equate you as a Great Dane. When Great Danes get to a certain level of their age, their hips go, everything goes, their joints go, and that's why people don't buy big dogs because the joints fail faster than the small ones. You're like that.
Yeah, and I recognize that, and I have no illusions about, I could last probably 10 minutes in a building and I'd have to exit rather quickly and go die somewhere. But and so we don't put people in that position. You know what I mean? So, we have standards for a reason, and we require people to meet those standards because it's a matter of safety. Like whether you're call, volunteer, full-time, whatever you are, you have to have that kind of training. So, we have people that are qualified to go in a building and we have an order, of things, and we have people that have certain certs and people that don't, and those people are not allowed to put on a pack. If you're not certified to go in a building, you don't put on a pack.
That's good.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Because it's a safety thing. So, do I have guys that want to just drive trucks? Sure. Absolutely. You want to come and drive a truck? Do I have people that are just EMTs that want to work on the ambulance? 100%. 70% of what we do is EMS nationwide. Yeah. Nationwide stat, right? I think in Atkinson, we're more like 66% or something, but regardless, right? That's something that we're going to do the most of. 7 out of 10 times when the bell goes off, it's going to be an EMS call, right? Where you work, you know that. You guys do plenty of those things there. So why wouldn't I hire an EMT who doesn't have any fire certs? Sure. And use them that way. Why wouldn't I hire them full time? And they can be group 1. They want to get fire certs? That's fine.
And I love that you bring that up.
CDL and drive a fire truck? You can do that.
I love that you bring that up. I'll get on that topic. Scott Thompson from the Colony, Texas, he came up with the initiative for his area that I'm going to hire EMTs to be EMTs. I'm going to hire firefighters to be firefighters.
Yes.
And it's paid dividends. It's his department grew. Yeah. Retention was better. Recruitment was better. He set the bar for that. Yeah. And I've been saying a lot since I've read his articles and I watched what he did. And I would love to see that change in our area as well, of if an EMT wants to be an EMT, let them be an EMT. Yeah. If the paramedic wants to be a paramedic, because like my wife asked this question, how come the paramedics don't become firefighters? Because they don't want to do it. Right. Like I'm not a paramedic because I don't want to do it. Not that there's anything wrong with it. No. I am not smart enough to be a paramedic. I know my skill level mentally. No. I am not smart enough to be a paramedic. Okay, sure. But regardless, I know you, because we had that conversation before, but I just think that I'd love to see that be a change in New Hampshire, honestly. And I think it's great. Like
Plastow has, they have 5 people on duty on a shift, and they have 3 people on the engine and 2 people on the ambulance. Some of those people on the ambulance they may just be a paramedic, no fire cert, and they work full time. And so he started it, and I agree with it 100%. Because at the end of the day, I need to get a truck out. And 7 out of 10 times it's going to be the ambulance. And the people in my town are expecting me to make sure that I have a qualified crew to help them in their time of need, whatever it might be. right? Would I love to have a whole staff of firefighter paramedics, the gold standard of whatever? Sure. But is that even the gold standard? You could argue that too. There's people that'll argue with you about that. You can't be good at both. It's hard.
I had a discussion with one of our
gaining muscle and losing fat at the same.
Yeah. And I had a discussion with that not that long ago with one of our guys. And he's like, I can only retain, he's a great medic and he's a great pump operator.
Yeah.
We had this discussion of, he's like, I can only retain so much information.
Yeah.
The paramedic skill level that my department requires of me, that's what I have to keep in my brain. All the others, the pump equations and everything else, and then all the other information, even SOPs, I can't retain all of it.
Yeah. I
got to focus on being a good medic because that's what I'm supposed to be.
Yep.
I can't do all of it. So we can, like you just said, you can't be good at all of it. Yes, you can, it's hard at points, right? Like you got to keep focused on what is your most important part. And for them, he loves being a paramedic.
Yeah.
And he's very, very good at it.
And
I love that he was so honest. He's like, I got to keep that because that's what they want me to be.
And it's, it's something that's fluid too. And so is firefighting in general. I mean, but I think the fluidness of change in firefighting is slower than in EMS.
EMS is always changing, man. Wow. It's crazy. Like new protocols every freaking month. It seems like it's just always happening.
Yep.
And to be a good medic, you've got to keep constantly reading up on that material. And
a lot.
I would love to see, I love the fact that Plaza was doing that. I see nothing wrong with a paramedic being a paramedic. If a fire department wants to hire a paramedic, let them be, but they give them the option.
Yeah.
If they start getting the bug of being a firefighter, I'll send you to it. Yeah. You want to get your certs?
And I
100%
always say that I'm happy to hire you as an EMT. If you want to get fire certs, go for it. If you don't, that's fine too.
Yep.
There's options out there. On my time program, I had a guy go through that and did his fire one throughout my time. And it's that Marine kid that you can hit with a bat. So that kid's super motivated.
Yeah, the New Hampshire Fire Academy instituted on my time learning.
Yep.
It's online modules.
Yep.
And you can get all your fire certs pretty much online. Then you got to go and do your practical stuff. You can reach out to a state or staff instructor, and they will help you get signed off on those practical hands-on evolutions. And then you got to take your final test, and then you get certified, and you're a Fire 1 and then a Fire 2. And I think that's a great way to institute that. To be honest with you,
great for the right person.
For the right person. And to be honest with you, I had this discussion with the academy. Not the only thing, but one of the big things I noticed is that it's really difficult if you're not affiliated with a fire department.
Yes.
You can't get the equipment or the gear to do those practicals. And the discussion I had is that, well, if they can't get it, they can join a volunteer department or call department. The thing is, as you know, not everybody wants to be a volunteer firefighter. Right. They're doing the on my time because it's a goal for them to become a firefighter.
Sure.
Not to join a volunteer fire department.
Yeah, but at the same time, why wouldn't you? If that's your goal, why wouldn't you get in there as soon as you could and start learning all that you could learn? And once you're affiliated too, it makes everything more.
But do you think it's time constraint?
I mean, maybe, but I mean, if that's your goal and that's what you're working towards, it seems silly to not do it.
I agree. But I guess it's I think of it as some of these guys or people are just trying to just get their foot in the door of trying to fast track it, if you will, I guess, right?
Sure.
And getting their education so then they can just shoot right to another department.
Well, in all fairness, why aren't we more like Massachusetts in some ways where we hire people and then send them to the academy?
Mm-hmm.
Why aren't we doing that?
Why aren't we doing that? That's a great question. Why aren't we doing that?
I never understood that.
When I had to get,
hey, I want to be a fireman. They're like, cool, go get all your certs first and then come back and talk to us. I'm like, well, I don't know how to do that.
Yeah.
Because I don't know anything about firefighting.
I don't understand why. Is it financial stuff? Is it because the state or because I imagine departments have to pay into that,
like a
right?
culture thing.
Maybe. I wish
we've never done it before. So why would we do it? We've always done it that way.
It's so difficult. And that was the biggest thing that I noticed when I was trying to join the fire service is why does the state not offer that?
Right.
Massachusetts, you can go across the border in Massachusetts and get a job and get hired and they'll pay for everything. And
you're going to the fire academy for 12 weeks. Here you go. And you come out fully certified and you get a graduation, picture taken and you're part of that department. It makes perfect sense. Why don't we do that?
Why don't we do it? Especially now.
The police do
the police do it.
The fire departments don't do it.
And we're struggling to get firefighters in the state of New Hampshire. But we don't offer it in the state of New Hampshire, and it doesn't make any sense. There's the problem, right? We have a problem. We can't fill these positions, but we don't offer as a state to fix the problem.
Right. I can't hire you because you didn't pass CPAT and you're not certified.
Yeah.
Huh?
And also the CPAT's not cheap.
How do I do that?
Think of what? The CPAT's up to $300.
Is it? much.
I haven't checked the prices recently, but that's expensive.
I didn't have to take it.
Nice.
I took the old state.
I took the old state test.
The really hard.
Nice.
2.5.
So these are like things that I do think about on a regular basis. And again, as you as being a chief, I imagine these things probably roll around your brain now, like as now that you're trying to think of recruitment and retention and how can you better the community that you're serving and also your members and to keep them there so they don't go somewhere else. Yeah. And like if you just like we talked about earlier, what a testament of you're willing to make things better of like you guys hit your schedule. Yeah. I'm going to fix that for you. And it's going to happen. And it happened. Yeah. You made that change. And 24/72 schedule I love it. I have it on my department. I absolutely love it. It's a great schedule. And that you were able to institute that is for something new in that department, that community and having that 24 coverage. That's awesome.
It took a lot. It took a lot because like the thing you have to understand is that like the rest of the town is not familiar with any of this stuff. Mm-hmm. And when you start getting into payroll, and you're getting paid on a 42 hour.
Oh, right.
Like they lost their mind. Like they're like, well, I don't understand. Like what? And then holiday pay and overtime. And like, they were like, we don't know how to do any of this stuff. And I'm like, all right, well,
but you do.
Here we go.
And I think that's what's great too, is you have that experience. So now I think that's so important as well is that you bringing your previous experience in as a working firefighter, being on the line, working those schedules, being a union president. Because if you eventually in your community, in your department, they go union, now you have the experience. You can help them as a chief. You can guide them through that process. Here's what you're going to need.
I need to be afraid of. Towns they get really upset with it and they think that it's bad, and it's not bad. It's it's just fair labor, and you get a contract, and like the cops in Atkinson are union and they have a contract.
Sure,
it's not scary. It just gives you the opportunity to negotiate some stuff is all.
I gotta tell you, I wish I had it in my previous department because things could have been a lot different. Yeah. But
it's also be met with a lot of resistance.
Yeah. But I think that's fantastic as you coming in that you have that working knowledge and that you can help guide them through those processes. And that's important to have a chief that actually gives a shit about their members. And if we're going to go down that road, you're not scared of it because you're familiar with it. Yeah. And I think that sometimes in those smaller communities, why people get so scared is because they're not familiar with it.
Right.
They only hear the bad things about it.
Yeah.
They don't
know.
Yeah.
They don't know what they don't know. And, you need somebody there to guide you through all that stuff and so you can understand it.
Yeah.
It's not all bad.
So big question I've been wanting to ask you all night because we're winding down.
Can I get a refill first?
Sure. It's not a tough question, but absolutely.
We need a little more truth serum first before.
This is not a tough one.
Oh God. I feel like it might be though.
No.
Are you good? Do you want a little?
I'll do a little splashy splash. Thank you, sir.
Well, we won't mention the brand because I don't know what kind of national attention you got. We got to poke this log a little bit too. It's been bothering me.
Poking his log.
Firemen are on fires. Okay.
So the big question I got to ask you is, what wax do you use for your mustache?
So I haven't waxed it in a while. And I actually grew like a full beard. We went on a cruise at the end of November into December, and I didn't shave. It was an 11-day cruise and shaved the whole time. I came back and I'm like, you know what? I'm just going to let this grow. And I was met with mixed results from people. Some of the other fire chiefs, I'd go to the chief meetings and be like, what are you doing? Are you retiring? Like, you have a beard. I'm like, I'm not going into a burning building. You might too. And I go, you're not wrong, but I probably won't. But obviously if somebody's hanging out of a window or I have to go in and check the rescue because I'm the first one there, of course. But I eventually shaved it off. But I didn't like it. Was there was a lot of gray in that sucker. So I've tried a bunch of different stuff. I had what was one called? I think it was fisticuffs was one that I had. I was looking at what's the
Stash salt?
Yeah, I was looking at some of those, but a lot of them were sold out and stuff when I went to look. And I just sort of gave up on it a little bit.
I can make a recommendation.
Yeah.
Stash salt
and
brass tacks.
Okay.
Those are my two top brands.
Yeah. The fisticuffs ones that I had one that was really stronghold and you had to use a solvent to get it out.
Yeah.
And I was like, this is rough.
Yeah. There's a lot of good brands out there, but I feel that Stash Salt and Brass Tacks are probably, those are my top two.
Are you sponsored yet?
I am not sponsored yet.
You probably should be.
But I do like using both their products. Griffin Coiner of Stash Salt, that's the owner. He's a working firefighter out of Utah, and I highly recommend his product. He does a lot of good things for a lot of good people and does a lot of fundraising. And Brass Tacks has just started out, and the guy is doing very well. He does a whole line of grooming products. So does Stash Salt. But if anybody's watching, Stash Salt, Brass Tacks, because this guy has an amazing mustache right there. I learned it by watching him, Erik Thomas.
I trimmed it up,
and then that's what I use, and I both think they're great products. So that's why I was curious, because you used to style it really well, and I was always curious what you used for that. So, do you have anything else that you wanted to bring to the table as we wind down?
I don't know. We talked about a lot.
We did talk about a lot. Yeah.
I could talk forever about fire department culture and setting people up for success. You know, we could spend a lot of time, but I think we probably covered a lot of it.
Yeah, I think we
I
get over and
bare my soul as much as I wanted to.
Well, we still got time.
No, that's right.
I still got time. Like, let's see what time it is. Well, we're over an hour.
15.
So we've been doing over an hour. Is there anything, like, I'm giving you this window, this opportunity. Is there anything that you feel that you wanted to bring to the table?
No, I'm good. I mean, I'm an open book, as you know. Like,
or we can do a part 2.
I'm always ready to talk about any of my experiences and what I went through, and you know, I have to be careful because, like, some people, most of the people I think when I was coming up have retired now. There's a few that are still around. My great friend Captain Steve Bateman from the Bedford Fire Department was here today.
Nice.
Came to visit the new place. So I got to see him today. He's a great guy. Learned a lot from him. Used him as a sounding board for a lot of stuff. He's a really good peer of mine for a long time. Great paramedic and he's a great captain at Bedford. They're lucky to have him. But yeah, you know, like I said, I've everybody sort of knows what I've done, what I've been through. I talk about it a lot. I think it's important.
It's very important. That's why I don't really hide my history. I think it's important especially for leaders to be honest, to be transparent, to talk about their experiences, because it is helping people who are currently in the job or people who are curious about the job to know that there is actually solid leaders who have some great experience.
Who struggled. That's the thing. Like, it's not all sunshine and rainbows, right? Like, you know, this shit's hard sometimes. Like, interpersonal relationships are hard.
Yes.
The firehouse is a completely different animal from anything else in the entire universe. But the one truism about the fire service is it's the same everywhere. I've done a lot of stuff for the National Fallen Firefighters Foundation over the years. And I met firefighters from all around the country, and they're all the same, right? Same circus, different clowns.
Yeah.
There's never been a truer statement issued, right? They're all the same. Some of the terminology is different, but you almost, well, if you're talking to somebody, you can almost always tell that they're on the job or not. You know, there's just something about how they talk. And it's the same on the West Coast as it is on the East Coast.
I've always said to my wife, I could tell a firefighter just by the way they dress when they're in civilian clothes.
Yeah. A lot of times, right? You know, whether it's the fire shirt or not.
Or the hey dudes now.
Yeah. So, you know, so I think, you know, being honest about the stuff that you've gone through, and that it's not all sunshine and rainbows, and that you struggled and you had issues, and it wasn't, I somehow managed to get myself into a chief position. Right. So people should know that it wasn't an easy ride for me the whole time. You know, the people should know that, like, I was pretty much like, I was never going to get past captain in Bedford ever.
Yeah.
Ever. Right. They weren't, you know, certain things happened, decisions that I made, decisions that they made, you know, interactions I've had with people that weren't positive. You know, all that stuff impacts you through your career, and you either gut through it and try and make the best of it, or you leave and you go somewhere else. I am not a quitter, so I stayed there for 20 years, you know, and maybe I shouldn't have, you know, and I'm willing to say that, you know, maybe it wasn't the best thing that I could have done, but maybe, you know, there's a certain amount of, like, Stockholm syndrome, you know, when you get into those situations.
It's funny you say that. I honestly think that's how I felt.
Yeah.
Because you and I talked a lot when I was struggling again, and my previous struggles, and I reached out to you a lot, and you helped me tremendously to really help pull that plug. Because I reached out to you like, hey, should I do this? You're like, yes,
Yeah.
do it. Because what do you have right now going for you?
Right.
Nothing.
Yeah.
You're not going to move up anywhere. Your doors are closing where you're at. And you really pushed me a lot. I cannot thank you enough for.
That's all based off of like shit that happened to me.
Right. And I think that's what was such a big thing. And I always told Krista, my wife, I said, Erik has really pushed me. I always said that, I say it to this very day. It's like, if it wasn't for Erik being one of those voices in my brain going, you got to do this.
Yeah.
And when I had my job offer for my department I'm on now, you were in my brain. And it was like, Erik Thomas is telling me to do this.
Yeah.
And your words have always echoed. Get out of the area that you're in. You're not going to grow any more than what you're at, right?
I warned you a little bit about the department that you were going to and kind of like the culture, at least, you never know what the culture is until you're there. But like from outside looking in and from things that you hear, because again, the fire service is a small community. So you hear stuff. And I think I was like, hey man, it may not be everything that you think it is, but I think at the end of the day, it was probably where you needed to go.
And it's been great.
Which is awesome.
Which is right. And you've been such a great advisor and such a great shoulder to lean on. And I'm glad I made that leap and listened to you and not listen to you in a way, right?
Yeah.
And it worked out really well. It's been a fantastic experience with the people that I get to be on. And I recently talked about it with Chief Stone of Concord of you need your posse. And that department's really become my posse.
That's awesome.
And it's a great feeling to have. And there's a lot of people that I can now relate to and bounce ideas off of. And
yeah, I mean, it's being accepted into a group, and I've always craved that. I've always been kind of a joiner in that way, and you always want to be accepted and you always want to be part of something bigger than yourself.
Yeah.
And it's great if you can do that and you can get, to that level where you feel really comfortable and you're, and really like, my last few years in Bedford, I had the crew that I had was absolutely amazing. And they really, that's really what helped me stay as long as I did.
It's a scary feeling trying to leave. But when you've been on an department for 20 years or 10 years, going to the unknown, it really is the unknown. And that's what held me back.
Out of your comfort zone.
It's out of your comfort zone. Absolutely. The unknown of going on to another department. And I think that's why a lot of people stay in those toxic work environments is because what if it doesn't work? And especially when you have somebody in that current department you're at going, there's no coming back. You leave here.
Yeah, and they're like, well, the grass isn't greener.
Yeah.
Well, sometimes it is, though.
Yep.
But you have to understand that it's still the fire service. So some things are always going to be the same.
Yep.
Whether you like it or not.
And I think, honestly, like when we talk about being honest, owning up to your mistakes, owning up to if you fucked up, if you say, yep, that was my bad. And when I joined the department I'm on now, I was up in front and honest with them. Is there anything you need to tell us when we do our background checks? And I was upfront and honest. I had been written up. I had been written up for having a shitty attitude, but something sparked that shitty attitude. And I told them everything that had to go in line with that. And they were understanding. And if I didn't hide it, they were understanding it. If I hid that and went, well, hey, what's this whole write-up? And then I had to tell a story and they're going to say, well, why didn't you tell us before that?
Right.
So if you're upfront, if you're worried about leaving your department because you have history, own your shit and be upfront and honest in those oral boards or in your background checks. Yes, this transpired. Tell them the story. Tell them the situation. If you're upfront and honest,
be honest. Don't bullshit.
If you bullshit,
Listen, again, the fire service is a really small world, and everybody knows. Probably the people that are sitting across from you have already called somebody that they know from your department that you're coming from to find out what the deal is.
100%.
Because like the connections that you make in this line of work are unbelievable,
especially in state of New Hampshire too. It's a small world. Everyone knows.
I've got to the point now where like people that I know in the fire service, their fucking kids are working in the fire service.
Yeah.
Like I had National Fire here the other day due to an unfortunate cable install or internet install, and their kids, like kids of the guys that I are like on the job and have been on the job for a while. And I'm like, I'm just like, I'm getting old, man.
Yeah. Well, you are old now.
Yeah, I'm old.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show. Thank you for inviting me to your beautiful, new to you home.
Yeah.
I'm so happy for you. And
Study.
Yeah, the Ford study, the Gerald Ford study.
Rich mahogany. That's no
bound books.
We'll work on that.
and thank you for sharing your whiskey with me.
Of course. And
I appreciate you.
you have a standing invite, sir.
Thank you very much.
So I would just say that anybody who's watching this stuff, if you want to reach out and ask me advice or have questions, my door's always open. Reach out to Mike and he'll get you my contact info. And I'm happy to help anybody who needs a little direction.
I love that. And that's all my guests have been open.
Yeah.
And I love that. That's usually the fire service, right? I haven't met anybody that says, do not contact.
No. No.
I do not want to give you information.
Just realize that like sometimes it's shit.
Yeah.
It's not always going to be the best job in the world. It's still the best job in the world, but sometimes it sucks.
You're absolutely 100% correct on that.
And maybe you need to talk to somebody about it. Maybe
Yeah.
you need some direction. Maybe you need, to talk to somebody who's been where you are and see how they handle it.
100%. And that's real quick is that it's not bad enough to make a bad decision.
Right.
There's always a different way to go. Don't make a permanent solution out of a temporary problem. If you have a problem and you're struggling and it's ruining your mental health, you can reach out to people.
Yep.
All the guests that I have on have stories and they have experience that they've been through these issues. I've been through the issues.
Telling of this whole thing too, like why does everybody have a fucking story? Right? Why does everybody have a bad experience? Why does everybody have, you know what I mean? Because the culture that's, well, we've always done it that way, or we've always do things, and you get these people and they get to leadership positions and they just propagate that attitude, and it's terrible.
It is.
So reach out, come talk to me about it. Come to my office. I don't care.
And we've all, but and not even just the bad leadership too, the bad calls.
Yep.
You've been in the job for a long time. You've seen some bad shit.
Yeah.
And if you don't know how to handle those bad things that are plaguing you,
talk to somebody.
Talk to somebody. If there's a call that is bothering you, don't hold it in. Talk to your brothers and sisters in your department. If you don't feel comfortable talking to them, there are so many avenues you can do that you can take to reach out to somebody so you can be successful. And if you have to take a break from the fire service is going to be here. No matter where we go.
And
once we leave, it's going to be here.
There's some legislation in place now that the gap in service is like up to 2 years now.
And that's so important. There's just times you got to step back. Yeah. And I think people need to realize that. That's an important thing.
The retirement system.
Yeah. By the way. But that's an important topic too. Is like, there might be times that you have to like physically, mentally take a break.
And that's okay.
And if you don't think you can, you can. So please don't make a tragic mistake and think there's no way out.
Right.
Please reach out to anybody. Reach out to Erik Thomas. You can reach out to me. Any of the guests I have on are all open books.
Yeah.
Talk to them. Talk to somebody.
We're all happy to talk about it. Like we're all been there. We've all had that call. We've all had that experience. It's
100%.
You're not alone. There's people you can talk to. There's no judgment. Nobody's going to think you're a pussy. Like some shit's fucked up. And some shit we shouldn't have to see, but we do. And the stuff that we have to go through, it's not only bad enough that we have these calls that we have to do, but then you have to deal with like shitty people at work and stuff too. You know what I mean? Like there's people you can talk to about it.
There's some people just going to be cold in your department or in the fire service in general. They're just going to be cold, and then they've had something that has made them cold and made them shut down. So they're not going to be that shoulder to cry on, but we're here for you. So please don't think you can't go anywhere and there's nobody to talk to. The fire service is a great family. There are people here that can help you through those tough times.
We love you. We want you to stick around.
Yes. Thank you so much, Erik Thomas, for being on the C.A.N. Report. I appreciate you, my friend. You've been a sage in my life of sage advice, and I appreciate the hell out of you. And thank you so much. I give you cheers. Cheers to you, my friend.
Cheers.
Cheers to you out there.
Not that I'm promoting drinking, but
thank you all for tuning in. I love you. Thank you for supporting me. Nozzle Tov.